over 2 years, 2 years, and they let that individual off with a warning. So when we're out here talking about these statistics, we're not talking just about the statistics, we're talking about the anecdotes. What's actually going on when you look at the basis for the stop and the basis for these tickets. What is also interesting is that the city of Ferndale neighbors 5 cities, 5 of them. We're talking the city of Detroit, Hazel Park, Pleasant Ridge, Royal Oak Township, and Oak Park. So we did a study. What is Ferndale doing in these other cities? And what we found is that 90% of the stops that are made by the city of Ferndale Police Department in other cities happen along the 8-mile corridor. The city of Ferndale does not share an 8-mile border with any city other than Detroit. No cities other than Detroit. In fact, when you're talking about Royal Oak Township, they pulled over the majority of people outside on 8 Mile, outside the city of Detroit, in Royal Oak Township. 100% of the citations that were issued and the stops that were made by the city of Ferndale Police Department in Royal Oak Township were made along the 8-mile border. Ferndale and Royal Oak Township do not share a border along 8 Mile. This indicates to us that there is predatory policing going on both eastbound and westbound by the Ferndale Police Department along the 8-mile border. 90% of the stops that were made on 8 Mile were made inside the city of Detroit. Inside the city of Detroit. There is definitively predatory policing going on. What is also interesting, the former chief of police from Livonia made a statement today in the news, sort of discrediting this report, which, by the way, he has never seen. He has no copy of this report. And he presented 2 fallacies for why our report might be, skewed. He's saying that we're misreading the statistics, and that if the police find somebody who has committed a crime, they should be able to arrest them. And those really are 2 fallacies for 2 reasons. First, his statement implies that because the city of Ferndale Police Department are arresting African Americans at 10 times the rate that they are of the population in which they're found inside the city of Ferndale, that inherently African Americans are committing more crimes. That's the implication. We know statistically that this is proven to be not true. This is not true that African Americans commit more crimes than any other demographic. It's not true, but that's what the statement implies, that they're finding African Americans committing crimes, so they should be able to arrest them at a much higher rate than they're found in the population. That doesn't make sense. That's a false narrative. The second thing is, when you look at what's happening, when you look at the anecdotes of what's happening with these arrests and these citations, is also proven to not be true. Let me give you a story. In 2021, when we were reviewing this data, the city of Ferndale Police Department happened upon a car accident that had happened inside the city of Ferndale on 8 Mile Road. The driver of the car was still at the scene of the accident. It's completely disabled. The driver of the car had fled the scene of the accident, had returned home, and had sent her father back to the accident to pick up the car with a tow truck. The city of police found that driver in her home, had a discussion with her. She admitted she drove the car. She admitted she crashed the car. She admitted she left the scene. And she admitted that she had not reported the accident. Not a single citation or charge was issued as a result of that car accident. Now, 2 months later, an African-American male driver is driving down 8 Mile Road inside the city of Detroit. He hits a light pole. The car is not disabled, so he continues on his way. Less than 2 blocks away from that car accident, he is pulled over by the city of Ferndale Police Department, who have witnessed that accident. He is arrested on the scene for failing to report a car accident. It is very ironic that the city of Ferndale could arrest this driver for failing to report an accident, because the accident happened inside the city of Detroit. It would have never been reported to the city of Ferndale, even if he had reported it. And furthermore, he was able to drive it, so he could have reported it later. There's no reason why this driver should have stopped and reported it when his car was able. So when we're looking at the statistics tell the story. The statistics provide some support for the fact that the city of Ferndale is engaging in policing practices that inherently catch up minorities, especially African American men, at a disproportional rate than they're found driving in the city or living in the city, because they're policing 8 Mile in a way that is predatory. But if you look at the anecdotes that arise from the actual citations and arrest records, what you see is that the city of Ferndale Police Department are treating drivers inside the city of Detroit differently than they're treating the drivers that are found inside the city of Ferndale. And they're treating minority drivers differently, whether they're found in Ferndale or in the city of Detroit, differently than they're treating their non-black or white counterparts, whether they're in Detroit or the city of Ferndale. So this is why these types of reports are important. And if we had a standalone report, you could say, you know what, maybe we have an angle, but we don't. This is at this point, over 9 years worth of investigation against the city of Ferndale that has resulted in 3 separate reports indicating that there's something amiss here. And the city of Ferndale has not been interested in resolving this. And at this time, we're asking them to resolve this issue. At this time, I'm going to turn the mic over to our Director of Safe Spaces, Noor Ali, who's going to talk to you a little bit about what we'd like to see happen with the city of Ferndale. Thank you.
Hello and good morning. My name is Noor Ali. I am the Director of Safe Spaces for CAIR-MI, Michigan. We are hoping that the City of Ferndale Police will bring in a third-party independent firm to investigate their policing of 8 Mile and the subsequent arrest from these targets. And for the past 2 years, CAIR Michigan has reached out to the City of Ferndale Police and to the City of Ferndale, asking them to take heed of our training services. As an organization, we offer cultural sensitivity training to police departments, school districts, employees, in order for them to understand the wants and needs of groups of people that they may not be accustomed to. From 2021 until now, the City of Ferndale has either declined or outright ignored our call. Police officers and city officials are people that we put into power, and we are hoping that as they have been called to serve the greater good and for the greater good in this country, that they are also taking into account the greater needs of people to which they serve. What has been happening in the City of Ferndale is gross misconduct, and we are hoping that they take heed of our call and take us up on the offer to commit to more training and to understand their population better. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll avail ourselves for questions, but just to wrap up, we are calling for 3 things in this report. The first is we are asking the Department of Justice to launch an official investigation into the policing of Ferndale, of African American motorists, and other motorists of color in particular, looking at 8 Mile Road. Number 2, we are asking the City of Detroit to resolve that the Ferndale Police Department is not allowed to pull drivers who don't even drive through Ferndale, being stopped, cited, and arrested for non-violent crimes driving through Detroit eastbound 8 Mile, without even going through Ferndale. The third is we are calling on the City of Ferndale to actually do what the ACLU Michigan asked for 9 years ago. Hire an independent firm to do a thorough investigation regarding their statistics and their policing so that hopefully they can start working on fixing their problems. And again, as my colleague Noor Ali said, it is simply not true when they say that we have not reached out to them in regards to their policing practices and our concerns about racial profiling. We actually have the emails that we can prove through our staff attorney to show our correspondence with Ferndale. So there's a lot of misinformation that's going on, and obviously we see that sometimes people in law enforcement get very defensive and not going to address and fix problems instead of saying, you know what, perhaps we do have a problem. Perhaps there has been invisible walls separating Detroit from Ferndale going back decades. Perhaps this just isn't a one-off issue when other civil rights organizations and researchers have brought them statistical data and raised concerns over the years. It's not just a one-off. But see, sometimes it's easy for people who get defensive to try to dismiss a report like this, and even dismiss it without even reading it. We did, however, send this report a couple of days ago to the city of Ferndale, and we look forward to them doing a thorough review. We're open to sit and meet with the city of Ferndale's police chief and their department to talk about suggestions about how to remedy this issue, as well as training, not just from us, but from other organizations who give training in regards to implicit bias, as well as cultural sensitivity, which obviously the Ferndale Police Department needs a lot more of. With that, we will avail ourselves to any questions. And sorry for those who are watching live stream, I forgot to start it. Earlier, I had started midway through our staff attorney's comments. But for those of you who are here, if you have any questions for us, we will take those now.
Are you aware of any police departments that have such an agreement that allow them to write tickets in other communities? Is that even legal in Michigan?
So the cross-jurisdictional ticket writing and policing is not uncommon. Like, for instance, when I was reviewing the statistic or the information and citations that we have from Ferndale, it is very apparent that Ferndale and Hazel Park have such an agreement, because some of the citations are actually, they were not citations, but they were police reports that indicated that Ferndale was called in by Hazel Park to assist with something, or to assist with traffic control and things like that. So it happens, but we requested information from the city of Ferndale about whether or not they had such an agreement with the city of Detroit, and they were unable to produce any documents that indicated they had such an agreement.
One last question on that. Is there anything legally that says one PD can go into another? That's an ordinance, and you're an attorney, so you know that's an ordinance for that city. Speak correct? I mean, how does that work? May they do that without such an agreement?
For under certain circumstances, they can. For instance, your police departments could go in, say somebody was traveling through down Woodward, because Woodward goes from Ferndale directly into Detroit, and they were traveling down Woodward from Ferndale, and they were pursuing somebody that went into Detroit. For a certain period of time, they're allowed to do that without notifying the police department.
For a non-violent traffic offense. I'm
saying, so
Sorry.
like say you have a traffic stop that they like try to initiate in Ferndale, but it somehow lapses over into Detroit for a certain period of time. They are allowed. The traffic incident occurs in a city and continues through to a neighboring city. It's not generally done when you're just policing a city that's not part of your police department. And I would say it's like a waste of Ferndale's resources to continue to police Detroit, but for the fact that they're creating this revenue stream for themselves off of the citations.
I know you had mentioned about how you believe that there is predatory policing along that 8 Mile corridor. Can you speak a little bit? I know you had touched on a little bit, but can you speak a little bit about the thought that certain groups of people tend to commit more crimes, and maybe as a result, maybe this is why they're doing some of these predatory practices to maybe perhaps keep in their minds the criminal activity out of their city?
Sure. So for anybody who's familiar with 8 Mile, right? 8 Mile is the border between Wayne and Oakland County. It has been a very contentious area that has been used to keep minority individuals in Wayne County and out of Oakland County and Macomb County. And we can talk historically about the fact that there's no mass transit that goes in between Wayne County and Oakland County, because the Oakland County commissioners didn't want it, and they actually stopped it. And it was specifically because of this idea that people in Detroit and minorities and African American men are committing crimes, and they don't want that coming into the city. And I can't speak to the intent, right, of the City of Ferndale Police Department, or why they have engaged in these policing practices. But I think if you read Mr. Stevenson's comments this morning that he gave, that they're just picking up the real criminals, I think that it's definitely implied there. And we know that minority groups and African Americans have told us that they don't drive on 8 Mile specifically because they're afraid of getting pulled over by the Ferndale Police Department. Like, they avoid that area. They go out of their way not to drive into Oakland County. They go out of their way not to drive in Ferndale. They go out of their way not to drive in Detroit along the border with Ferndale, because they are afraid that they are going to be dragnetted by the Ferndale Police Department for these pretextual stops, and then resulting in some other issues. And if you look at the city of Ferndale's own statistics from 2019, 2020, and 2021, the use of the force against minorities is significantly higher than it is against white males. So African American men in 2019 were 5% more likely to be used to have use of force utilized against them by the Ferndale Police Department. In 2020, that went up to 10%. In 2021, Ferndale statistics indicate that it is 1.5 times more likely that they're using force against an African American. And what we've seen is that these uses of force are arising out of traffic stops. For crimes involving driving while license suspended. So that's when I say predatory policing, that's what I'm talking about. You can't tell somebody has a license suspended just because they're driving down the street. You have to pull them over to get that information. So they're pulling people over for the purpose of, in conducting some investigation about what may or may not be happening in a car that's not even in the city of Ferndale.
Just to add on another comment, there's a way that the Ferndale Police Department can remedy this issue. So I'll give you an example. Under the previous Dearborn Police Chief, Haddad, there was an issue of African American motorists being disproportionately stopped with Dearborn policing Wyoming, which borders Detroit, and Dearborn. Since the new administration came in with Chief Shaheen, which we met with, he saw that there was a disproportionate impact on Black motorists getting pulled and getting profiled, driving from Detroit to Dearborn. So he stopped literally having people at the border just to pull Detroiters, driving them from Detroit to Dearborn, right? So this is a proactive step of the new police chief undoing a policy of the prior police chief that was leading to disproportionate outcomes and racial profiling. Likewise, the Ferndale Police Department doesn't need to be policing 8 Mile going eastbound of motorists who don't even drive through the city of Ferndale. This is just one of those small remedies that would help with this particular issue. It would have stopped the issue of our client that we ended up having to sue the city of Ferndale about, which the city of Ferndale settled that case because she was driving eastbound 8 Mile without ever having driven through the city of Detroit. I mean, driven through the city of Ferndale. You see, so this is a type of example of a remedy. Are there any questions? Any further questions?
And one just little push beyond that add on is obviously Issa Shaheen did what he needed to do to make sure that his administration, his police officers were changing the culture behind that.
Correct.
You were asking for the Ferndale police chief to maybe make a similar move, but would you also then say, hey, you're asking for potentially a public apology or anything, else to remedy that situation? What would make you guys say, you know what, this is acceptable beyond just what you've stated?
We think that the Ferndale Police Department is sincere, that they themselves with the city should hire an independent firm to investigate their policing practices, which will then take specific remedies that they can put into practice. Likewise, they should welcome an outside entity like the Department of Justice to investigate them, and they should fully cooperate in handing over all documents and being transparent in regards to their statistical data, right? Including the issue of which they have people that they have cited in which they claim that they don't know the race or ethnicity of those people that they have cited, right? So these are things, right? Instead of being defensive, saying, you know what, there's a historical problem of policing between Wayne County and Oakland County, between Detroit motorists and Ferndale. There's a long history of hyper-segregation in Metro Detroit. Moratorium now in 2002 put out a billboard on 8 Mile warning of racial profiling zone. Like this, like the Ferndale police is very aware of the protests, the press conferences, the pleas of the African American community in particular. So since Ferndale claims to be serious about diversity and inclusion, then they should take some steps so that African Americans don't feel excluded from the city of Ferndale, or maybe don't even want to drive into Ferndale to even go get some vitamins or eat. I myself avoid driving through Ferndale. I have family who live in Detroit who don't even want to drive down 8 Mile Road, going west or eastbound out of concerns of being pulled. So this is a real issue, right? So the city of Ferndale should want to be welcoming to everyone in the region. That's what we say.
What's the root of this problem? Is it systemic racism? Is it a money grab? Is it a culture that needs to be addressed?
We don't know the intention of why there are disproportionate stops, but what we can say is that in southeastern Michigan, and in particular between Oakland County and Wayne County, there is a well-documented history of racial tension, hyper-segregation, and we know without a doubt that there is a history in America of systematic racism in relationship to African Americans with law enforcement, especially African American men. This is undeniable. The whole country was protesting about it a few summers ago with George Floyd. This is a known fact, and it's been proven by criminologists and researchers, right? In general, across the United States of America, and especially with Metro Detroit being one of the most hyper-segregated metropolitan areas in these United States of America, right? So we believe that these factors most likely lead to this police practicing. And when we say predatory policing, right, it's not necessarily about the intention, but the impact. The statistics don't lie, Ferndale. The statistics do not lie about who's getting pulled, where they're getting pulled at, who doesn't get pulled. What are the population demographics of Ferndale, right? Black people are not more prone to criminality than white folks. You cannot tell someone driving down the street whether their license is suspended or not. How are they getting pulled? If white people were getting pulled at the same percentage of their population going down that road, then we would see similar statistics. So the statistics don't lie.
Is this press conference to get their attention? And if you don't get their attention and they don't reply with some action, what then?
Well, the purpose of this press conference is three. We are making this known to the community. We have passed this on to the Department of Justice, and we plan to follow up them more. We hope they look more into this matter. We would like the Ferndale police to remedy this issue. We'd like for the Detroit city to also look into this issue, in which we plan on meeting with them. We forward this. And also, let me mention the fourth point. If any people, any citizens or residents in this area who have experienced problems or feel they've been profiled by the Ferndale police, we encourage them to contact CAIR-MI. And we've been involved in police accountability work over the years, and we've assisted not just Muslims, but people who are not Muslims. We have a track record of this. We were working with the family of Renisha McBride over a decade ago when that young girl was killed by the Detroit Police Department. When so-called RoboCop beat up an unarmed African-American motorist in Inkster. We were involved in advocacy on that, right? So we've been very vocal as far as facial recognition technology and people being falsely arrested by the Detroit Police Department. So we have an issue in regards to police accountability and fair policing. And if people feel they've been profiled, it doesn't matter whether they're Muslim or not. We want the problem to be remedied. And plus, 1/4 of the Muslim community is African American. I'm African American. So this issue directly affects Muslims as proof of our client who had to sue the city of Ferndale for being improperly stopped by the Ferndale Police Department.
How do you want police departments to respond for maybe criminal acts outside of their jurisdiction?
If they actually know that there is a criminal act that's taking place in which they witnessed, or they being called by the Detroit Police Department, then of course they should get involved in that. But we're not talking about active criminal activity in which the Ferndale police is stopping people. We're talking about motorists driving down the road, and we're talking about non-violent offenses. We're not even talking about offenses in which people are fleeing from the police. We're not talking about high-speed chases, right? We have no problem with the police doing their job. And we are not anti-police. We are anti-police misconduct. We're anti-police profiling. That's what we are. We're not anti-police. We want police to do their job and keep us all safe.
To your question, I think it's important to also state that, and to reiterate what I stated earlier, is that the Ferndale Police's actions when it comes to arrests inside the city of Detroit or along 8 Mile are not the result of active criminal activity. There's not a single arrest that was made on 8 Mile Road that involved active criminal activity. There wasn't a single 911 call that resulted in the police appearing on the scene. The vast majority of these arrests were for things like driving while license suspended, which is not an active criminal activity that would be known to anybody, that would result in police being notified of it. And if you go to the transparency dashboard from the city of Ferndale, what you realize is that an overwhelming majority of arrests made by the city of Ferndale, whether inside or outside the city of Ferndale, are for driving while license suspended. It outnumbers every single other type of arrest. They are not engaging in active criminal deterrence. They're not appearing at Myers, which is where they arrested our client at. They're not appearing at Myers when somebody at Myers is getting like strong arm robbery or assaulted. They're not appearing in those cases. They're only appearing for the purpose of pulling Detroiters over and issuing them tickets and arresting them if they can investigate and find some underlying nonviolent criminal activity that's taking place. This is not active criminal investigation by the Ferndale Police Department.
Thank you very much for your time, and to those media professionals who are watching the live streaming. And we're sorry that it's my fault that I did not start the stream when I thought I started, but you may contact our office for any further media inquiries. And again, for those people who are watching, if you have any complaints, you may contact our office at CAIR Michigan, and we will do our best to intake your case and to serve you as best as we can, to speak to the Ferndale Police Department to try to reconcile the situation before taking any legal action, because legal action is never our first step as an organization. We try to mediate situations before litigate situations. Thank you all very much.
Oh, man. This is yours? Yeah. Oh, no, you're good. You're good. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.